Now, let's move on to the journal entries. Na. Sa journal entries is diri mas masabta na to ang journal entries if magpakita ta daan sa flow, which ato ipakita diri no. There, kani. Diba? Kani siya nga flow is makita nimo ang imong mga accounts. Mao po ni siya ang murag mo help nimo in journalizing, di ba? Makasabot ka sa pag-journalize if kabaw ka sa flow sa job order costing. Now, let's start if ang imuhang raw material, if pupalit ka raw materials, of course, debit nimo ang imuhang purchase of raw materials. Now, ang imuhang magamit na raw materials, ang ma-issue nimo directly to jobs or katimong direct materials, of course, ari siya sa imuhang work in process. Now, ang kaning work in process is lahi-lahi na siya kada job ha. Oh, so, dili gyud necessary nga maglahi-lahi og ti-account kada job. Pero again, through the job order cost sheet is ma-determine nimo kung unsa nga specific job or unsang material ang gamitan sa unsang specific job. But sa imong work in process account is ara mo anha mo sulod ang katong imuhang magamit sa imuhang or mga direct materials nga imuhang magamit sa imuhang kada job. Now, for your indirect materials is moagi pa siya sa imuhang factory overhead. So mo credit ka sa imong indirect materials diri and then mo debit ka sa imuhang factory overhead control. Now, as you can see, factory overhead control. Your factory overhead control is mao ni ang mag-take down sa imuhang actual gyud nga overhead nga nagami or actual overhead cost gyud nimo ang kanimong factory overhead control. Now, as to your payroll, same ang imong payroll cost nga na-incurred is debit. Now, for the direct labor cost assigned to the jobs is ari siya dito sa imuhang work in process. For the indirect labor is ari pa siya sa imuhang factory overhead control. Now, again, your factory overhead, ang kaning side is mo yung mga actual nga cost. Now, your applied factory overhead is imo siya deducted na niya. Mao imuhang i-carry over sa imuhang work in process. Now, again, ang sa pagkuha sa imuhang applied factory overhead is using your predetermined overhead rate. Now, once na ang kanang imuhang mga work in process and makadetermine na ka sa imuhang cost of jobs completed. So, ang cost of jobs completed is of course maadto sa imong finished goods account. And then, once matinda na siya, kaya mahimo na siyang cost of goods sold or cost of jobs sold. And then, of course, ari siya sa imuhang cost of goods sold na account. Now, ari ta sa tong mga entries, no? Or let's, if we can do this side by side. There. Para ma-guided. Masa siguro. Kita ako. So, we have here, first is the purchase of materials. So, of course, if the purchase of materials on account, debit ka sa materials, 2.5. So, ari ka sa purchase of raw materials. Since on account is credit, accounts payable. Now, materials costing 1.5 were requisitioned for production. Now, this entry, again, ang triggering nga document ani is your materials requisition. Again, ang triggering document ani is your materials requisition. So, meaning, ari na ka ani nga part ay ari na ka nga flow, materials used directly to jobs. So, imuhang gi-credit ang materials and then gi-debit mo ang work in process na account. Okay? Mo man gigamit as imuhang direct materials. So, mo ni siya nga entry. Next is direct labor costing 1,530 was recognized. So, anina ka, 'di ba, na kay for instance na kay direct labor kani siya is kato na lang siyang pag-recognize nimo. But before ka mag-recognize ani, di ba, mag-declare pa kag expense. So the payroll expense is kani siya, wage expense. And then ang direct labor nga assign sa imong job o kani siya is mo na siyang imong butang sa imong work in process. So kana siya. Or kato imong expense, di siya expense account, but imo na siyang gikuan sa imong work in process. Dili siya salaries expense account tayo man siya kung ganun. Siya salaries expense account, but ato siya nimo ibutang sa imong work in process kay since direct labor man siya. So kana siya. Ang imong document ani is your job time ticket, diba? So kana siya mo imong basis. And then next is overhead was applied to production at a rate of 2 per direct labor hour and a total of 170 direct labor hours were work. So mo na ni siya nga what do you call this? Compute na kasi imong predetermined overhead rate. Mo to tong gikuha ganiha katong 2, and then gi-apply na nimo sa imong work in process. So again, debit work in process, credit overhead control. So kani siya, mo ni siya nga flow. Kani. Now, next, your actual overhead cost of 415 were incurred. So ani na ni siya nga part kani kato imong mga actual overhead. So mo na siya imong debit diha sa imong overhead control na account. So kato siya. And then next is the backpacks were completed and transferred to finished goods. So kato imong mga na-complete na, in our case ang backpacks naman to ang na-complete or gitag as complete. So ang cost ato mo imong credit, and then imo siyang gidala sa imong finished goods. So kana. And then from finished goods is total of backpacks were sold at cost plus 50%. So from your finished goods is imo siyang giadto sa imong cost of goods sold. So kana siya. And then nag-declare pud ka sa imong revenue. So nakuha ra niyo ang flow gamit sa journal entries. And then, of course, katong overhead na to ganiha, di ba nga, under applied man ta. So, ang katong gikan sa to ang overhead control, kita balik ta diri. The difference of this one, di ba, kay katong ato ang applied is under man siya, so mas dako ang diri na side in compared to diri nga side. So meaning, di ba natoy what do you call this? Mag-credit ta diri sa ato ang overhead control o katong variance niya, then dadon na nimo siya padung diri sa imong cost of goods sold na account. So kani is mapunan pa niya siya diri sa katong imuhang overhead. Now, mag-vary na siya again. Diri lang is, since under-applied man siya, mao nang naka-debit atong cost of goods sold niya. Credit ang control account. But if over-applied na siya, of course, balisad siya. If naka-over-applied is, debit ang imuhang overhead control and then credit ang imuhang cost of goods sold. So, kana lang siya imuhang mga entries. So, these are the accounts. So, see, tanawa, kani siya, katong kita rin po ang atong process. So, kana, asagi ka ng 1530, head control. Then, the actual, see, makita na ninyo, ang actual are record sa debit side. And then, transfer of job to finished goods. And then, katong cost of goods sold. And then, see, katong lang sa under applied. So again, as I mentioned ha, kani siya is mag-vary siya sa pag-entry nimo kung under o over-applied. Kung over-applied, of course, ari siya diri sa imong debit side. And then sa imong cost of goods sold is sa imong credit side. Kung under-applied is debit ang cost of goods sold, credit ang overhead control. So that ends our first part of our job order cost system. Now, for the second part is we will be talking about the, what do you call this? The allocation of your service department. So, nanay katong, what do you call this? I forgot. Service department cost allocation. So, kana siya. Again, as a recap lang ta sa job order o process costing. Job order, more on heterogeneous. Process costing is homogeneous. Sa imong job order is magamit siya sa imong job order nga cost sheet. Na sa imong job order cost sheet is again, makita didto. Sa imong job order cost sheet is makita didto ang imong direct materials, makita ang imuhang direct labor, makita ang imuhang factory overhead. Now, for the direct labor, ang imuhang document, source document is your materials requisition. No, not direct labor. But for direct materials, ang imuhang source document is your materials requisition. For direct labor, your source document is your job time ticket. For your factory overhead, is first you need to excuse me, you need to determine your predetermined overhead rate. Now, how do you get your predetermined overhead rate? You make use of your estimated overhead cost or the budgeted overhead cost divided by your cost driver, and then makuha na nimo imuhang predetermined overhead rate, and then using the predetermined overhead rate, POR lang. Using the POR is that makuha na pud nimo ang imuhang applied overhead cost. So kana mao imuhang gamiton, and then mao ang reflect sa imuhang cost of goods manufactured. So in the cost of goods manufactured, ang makita ra nimo is kato imuhang direct materials, direct labor, and the overhead applied. Mao na ang reflect sa imuhang cost of goods manufactured. Now, kung maabot na siya sa imuhang cost of goods sold, is dapat ma-reflect na diha ang katong imuhang actual na overhead cost. So, how do you do that? It's either you add or deduct the variance of your overhead. So, under applied, if mas dako ang imuhang actual, so that is under applied. So, i-add siya sa imuhang overhead, not overhead, i-add siya sa imuhang cost of goods sold. If over-applied, meaning mas dako ang imuhang applied overhead, i-deduct siya sa imuhang cost of goods sold. So, meaning your cost of goods sold should be adjusted at the end of each period. So, that's the end of job order costing.